Welcome again, Jayne, my wife. I'm Will Murtha, and I'm the author of Create Your Own Life Story. And this is my wife, Jayne, my business partner. And we are on a bit of a journey, aren't we?
We are.
And we're on a journey to discover all the elements that hold us back in life and keep us small and just keep us in that small place. And one of the big subjects, as we know, which we're going to cover today, is fear. And I have a strange relationship with fear, like a lot of people, because if you take that, it could be the number one culprit for why people don't live a happy, fulfilling life. And that's very sad. And that's one of the things that motivates us. And, like I've said, we should put fear on the wanted list for crimes to humanity for what it's done, because it's probably held more people back from living their best life than anything else. Fear.
Shining their light.
Oh, it's just awful. And, the thing that I'm always trying to tell both myself and others is that we can't eradicate fear. We've got to manage it, because, if we got rid of fear completely, we'd actually be quite a danger to both ourselves and the rest of society. And, I love it when people come up and say, oh, I'm fearless. And I think there's a dangerous person because, fear is actually there as a good checker to keep us in line, but it's also there to help us grow and develop. And I think we've kind of got fear all wrong, haven't we?
We have. But, it's naming our fear, because fear itself is a frightening feeling. We feel out of control. So, if we look at what do we fear? We fear rejection. We fear disapproval. We fear getting it wrong. We fear hurt, either emotionally hurt, so we don't get into relationships in case we get hurt, or, we won't do a sport or something in case we get hurt. We're so afraid of the consequences, but unless you try, you'll never know. We fear not being enough. There's phobias. That's a fear of anything, and it can be quite irrational sometimes. People can be fearful of polystyrene blocks, or common ones are spiders flying, or flying spiders. That would be my worst fear, flying spiders.
I'm sure somewhere in the world there's a flying spider.
Don't tell me that, because I won't go there. Fear of missing out, fear of aging, and of course, ultimately, fear of death.
Big one, the big one. And if we let fear run riot in our lives, which is what we see in every day with every client appointment, period. Fear will be showing up somewhere. It'll show its ugly face in some element. And it's natural. So I think what we've got to do is we've got to realize, where does fear show up and where does it run riot? It shows up by fueling our inner critic. So if we're fearful, I've always seen in my clients that their inner critic volume turns up if they're fearful. Self-sabotage is always close by. If we're fearful of something, we're likely to self-sabotage ourselves. When people are very fearful and they don't want to step into their courage, or what we call their personal power, they can often turn it inwards, can't they? And they get very envious and jealous of other people, because they haven't got the courage, they haven't got the confidence to step into something and take a risk, get outside of their comfort zone. It can often turn inwards. And I think when fear does turn inwards, it turns into envy, rage and jealousy towards others, because really what we're seeing in others is what we're we're almost seeing our potential, and we know that we could do better, but it's easier to throw that mud on the other side, isn't it?
Yes, it's a form of denial, really. It's denying that that you can do it. So they must have some superpower, or they've just had a lucky break, and that is when you turn it inwards. But if we don't face our fears, quite often we make our lives worse. So if you fear the dentist and don't go to the dentist for years, actually, when you go, you've probably got to have a whole load of work. So, sometimes it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we don't face our fears, our health suffers. If we don't name the elephant in the room, if there's a problem building between your boss, or there's a problem at work of some kind, maybe you didn't get time to do something where it was just a small thing. You build it up in your mind, and if you don't talk about it, that can grow either in your mind or it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
You know, if you'd named it early, it wouldn't have been a problem. But because you've left it, because there might be some shame or guilt attached to it, like you left the tap on in the room or something and it flooded, you know, that it can snowball into something much bigger if we don't face our fears.
I mean, a funny fear that I see in a lot of clients, particularly the high, what I would call the high, we're all high achievers, but we're all top performers at that top end. But, you know, when our best self shows up. But what I see in my particular field of people I coach in is that imposter syndrome. You know, that's a basically fear of, I don't deserve this good things happening. I'm not good enough, and everyone will find out and knock on my door one day and say that lovely life, that lovely car, that lovely home, that lovely job that you've got, that you're not deserving of that. And I see imposter syndrome show up a lot in a big majority of my clients that would the outside world would judge as super successful achievers, and yet imposter syndrome is a big fear that shows up. You know, overwhelm is another one. You know, when we fear something, overwhelm will tend to take over our body, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. In the chemicals, you know, what does fear, you know, actually look like? Where does it show up? It doesn't show up in the head; it shows up in the body. So I think, you know, our fear of other people's opinions grows when we're fearful. Our life seems smaller. We just blow things up into bigger problems than we are, don't we, with fear?
Yeah, and we vacillate, and we're...
Good word. Yeah.
Word of the day. We vacillate between, you know, wanting to do something and not wanting to do something. You know, we can't make decisions when we're afraid. You know, it's hard. You can't make the right choice because you're frightened of getting it wrong. So you end up not making a choice or totally missing something because you didn't make your mind up in time. So fear can be, you know, it can... You know, a small amount of fear can motivate us and get us to get on with something. But if we let our fear overtake us, we believe we can't manage. And it's that belief then that actually destroys, you know, all the good that you could be doing for yourself.
I agree. And the thing is with fear is that, you know, you got a choice. You can either confront fear on the front foot, you know, like in a boxing ring, or you can cower into the back of the ring and you will get punched, you know, senseless. And literally, if you don't use your courage and use your confidence, even though you don't feel overconfident, it's to step outside of your comfort zone. If you don't manage fear, it will control you. And I think what I've learned over the years, both myself and clients, is that the ones that don't at first attack fear with a front foot, if they don't, then they're inner critic of you're no good, you know, you knew that you would fail on that. You know, they've got this rolling dialogue of self-flagellation almost that goes on. So, you know, if you don't confront your fears, your inner critic is going to take you over in your body anyway. So, you know, let's talk about where fear shows up for most people. Where does it show up for you, Jayne, in your body?
Where does it show up in my body? Well, I usually get a rash if I'm stressed, because I'll start scratching my hands or something. So I know that I'm under stress, that there's something I'm fearing that I'm not facing up to. I might go for sort of addictions because I'm not, you know, that I'm wanting a distraction. I'm wanting to kind of soothe myself because I'm feeling fearful. So, you know, I'll turn to the chocolate. You know, I'll tell myself I'm rewarding myself, but you know, it's because I'm afraid of something and I'm trying to bolster myself with something that isn't really going to be helpful at all. It's a short-term fix. So that's how fear shows up in my life.
I mean, you know, we talk about fear showing up in the body, don't we? With you know, the body keeps the score, basically. In that, if you don't express fear, if you don't face it, if you don't deal with it, it will lock in the body. And where does it lock in? It tends to mostly lock in. Well, first of all, on the skin, rashes is a big one, isn't it, for a lot of people? And you saw that in the NHS. You know, rashes, sort of blemishes, anything that's on the external skin will be some kind of idea that there's some sort of anxiety or fear underneath the surface. Another one is obviously fear shows up in our and holds as tension in our organs, and particularly in our muscles in certain points of our body. So very much the same when we talk to people, we're always asking them, where is your fear showing up? And it will be shoulders, neck, back, lower back, headaches, side, stomach, and chest.
Indigestion. Because what can't you digest? If I get indigestion, that's my first question to myself is, what am I not digesting? Because I'm probably eating quickly because I'm worried about something and I'm not really consciously eating. So I'm eating quickly and causing indigestion because all those thoughts that I'm having while I'm eating are worried thoughts. That put my body, my mind, my emotions under pressure.
I mean, so let's look at ways that we all confront fear on the front foot in different ways. So, for me, the number one thing I'm always trying to tell myself and clients is, fear is normal, it's natural, it's acceptable. Don't run away from it. Don't try and repress it. Sit with it. Listen to it, go through the pain of it, because you can either deal with it, or, like we've talked on many times before, you can push that beach ball below the surface, but fear will bounce back up again like it did as a kid. Like it will come out of the water like a rocket. You try and sit on the ball at the bottom of a swimming pool and it's going to come out, and it's a great game. But if that's an emotion, then it's going to keep popping up, and it will pop up often bigger, won't it? And more, stronger. And so, my first thing is accept it. My second one is get your journal out and start to name your fear, because there are certain fears that show up for you repetitively. And, if you name it, you claim it. So get those fears down. It might be fear of loss. It might be fear of I don't have enough money. It might be fear of I'm not talented enough. I mean, we could go on with a list of fears, couldn't we?
Well, anything you can think about, you can turn it into a fear. As Bill just said about name it and claim it, I call it name it, claim it, and tame it. Because once you face your fear, it's never as big as you think it is. It's not like that big shadow behind you. Once you turn around and look, you see it is just a shadow. There's nothing real. And I've found when I've sort of faced my fears, it stirs up feelings in the body. But if you can sort of look at it in a different way and say that fear is trying to tell me something, it's either trying to warn me to protect myself, or it's telling me I'm excited. I mean, when, to do something like this, when we have to talk quite a lot in public, when I first started doing it, I was an absolute nervous wreck. I would be shaking under the table. Stories I've done in other episodes. But now I tend to see it because the autonomic nervous system is what triggers our fight or flight chemistry in our body. It also is very similar, the same lines are used for our excitement. So now when I do things, if I feel nervous, I say to myself, this is nervous tension, that I actually need it because it actually motivates me to say what I need to say. Otherwise, I'd just be a chilled out, pot smoking, Topnesian. But I'm not. So I've learnt to teach myself that fear is a good thing. That it's something that helps me recognize that this is important. This is important to me, and so I need to look at it and deal with it in a different way.
I sort of, I mentioned a couple of times in the book as well, if fear could have one sentence and a voice, fear would say, you've got me all wrong. You've got me all wrong. Because I think fear is there to actually help develop us, grow, become more, stretch, expand. And I think the problem is that so many of us let fear, not just tame us, we let fear put us in a cage. And, we know too many people, and there is nothing worse. A friend of mine, Adrian, works with people in the last days and weeks of their lives in a hospice. He's been doing it for 20 odd years. And there is nothing worse, and he says this as well, than hearing a story from someone in the last hours and days of their life, that say that they didn't live fully all because of fear.
Yeah.
You know, and actually, you know, we should be teaching this stuff in schools, in colleges, in universities. You know, when you think of some of the things we leave school and college with that we never use again, and yet teach people how to manage and overcome fear, and life would change. And it's one of the things and hopes of me and Jayne, you know, and other friends of ours that are coaches and therapists, that we should be teaching this stuff earlier, because we know with the pilot that we've done in the last year, working with 16, 17 and 18-year-olds, they get it. And once they get it, they haven't got all that old mind programming and conditioning to hold them back. And once they get a tool, once they get a little tactic, a strategy, a practice, their life just takes off, doesn't it?
It's adding, every time you conquer a fear and you learn to work with it rather than against it, it's like adding another string to your bow. You know, you know, oh, I've got that one. I named it and I claimed it and I tamed it, and it no longer frightens me anymore because I know I can survive through it. You know, often because of the media, and, you know, we're always looking for the melodramatic. We're always looking for, you know, things that can only get worse. Well, actually, flip that. Things can only get better. If you face your fears, they can only get better.
Oh, so true. And just before we finish on the end in a minute, for the reasons why fear is showing up, you know, there's a couple of other things that we can confront fear with. You know, my clients, I've noticed over the years, you know, just them taking action. You know, take action, because procrastination, you know, which is not taking action, the opposite, will hold you in a headlock. And what action does, it will help you to move everything forward. And actually, once you break past that fear barrier, it's a bit like breaking sort of past the sound barrier. Once you've gone past it, you're in a different space, aren't you? A different place. And, you know, another thing is that because fear, like anxiety, like stress, all those negative emotions will lodge in your body. And, you know, even you just shaking, getting outside, walking, running, that will help you with your fear. That's what helps us, and it's what helps our clients, isn't it?
Yeah, movement. If you move it, it kind of moves your brain as well, you know, because otherwise you're just fixed in fear and you're just going over the same old tape, the same old thing going over and over and over in your mind. Once you move, it also helps your mind move. You know, it sort of, it gives you something else to think about, because you can start noticing things around you then. You know, sitting down in the armchair or the rocking chair is not going to serve you.
Yeah. And I think, you know, the reason for fear, if we keep it really simple, is that, you know, fear is basically evolution's way of warning us to keep us safe, isn't it? But, you know, if we appreciate that when fear shows up, it's going to feel uncomfortable. It will be felt in the body. That's the chemical alert system flashing the red lights going, beware, you've not been here before. But once you go over that rumble strip, call it, once you go past it, you know, you move to the other side. Because if you decide that you're going to change your relationship to fear and make it your friend and not your foe, what you're saying is that, okay, I will feel a bit edgy doing something for the first time. It's going to feel a bit unpredictable. It will certainly feel uncomfortable and scary and unknown, but that's meant to be there. And once we start training the brain to expect it, because I think we've sort of kind of got it the wrong way around. We're almost not expecting it, or telling ourselves to not expect it, and when it does show up, it's almost a hindrance. But it's not. It's there for a reason, and we know it, don't we?
We do.
So guys, thank you very much. This hope this has helped you all about fear, and thank you again, Jayne, and we'll be back with another episode another time. Thank you very much.